right, so okay. So good evening everyone and welcome to today's Python crash course. Um as part of the series in the data science research training program. Okay, let me share my screen. So we'll be starting off with Python and getting a good understanding on what Python is about. Python is a high-level language or a computer programming language, just the same way you have human speaking languages, you have computer understandable languages, and Python is one of them. We have quite a handful of other programming languages that computers interact with, or humans use to interact with the computer device. We have Python, we have Java, we have C++, amongst others. Python is one of the simplest and user-friendly computer programming languages we interact with the computer. We're going to be looking at a couple of things: input and output statements, lists, tuples, and dictionaries. So I think what we'll start off with before we get to the slides is get a good understanding of the environment of Python, or what you call an IDE. An IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. So IDE is basically where we write our Python code, the same way we use our notebooks, our notepad, or our physical notes to write human speaking languages. We also have an integrated development environment for Python and for other programming languages. Now for the purpose of this course, we are going to be using Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook is one of the Python's IDE for programming and specifically for data science. It's quite easy to use and install. But if you are not able to use Jupyter Notebook, you can use Google Colab. Google Colab, it's an online tool that was created by Google company, and it's quite similar to Jupyter Notebook, the same interface and the same process involved.
Now, let me.
So all you have to do is all we're going to be using is Jupyter Notebook for the purpose of the course. If you can't use Jupyter Notebook, you can always use Google Colab, and they work quite similar. So to run our Jupyter Notebook file, or to start our Jupyter Notebook, I'll just go to my command line. So I'll just search for terminal. If you're on a Windows computer, that should be command prompt. Yeah, so if you are on an Ubuntu operating system, I think that should still be terminal too. So I believe we already have Python installed and Jupyter Notebook installed also. If you don't have Jupyter Notebook or Python installed, you can just use the online version of Google Colab and just follow along the course. Click on it, sign in. Let me minimize this. Okay, I think I'll have to sign up before I am able to use Google Colab, but let me do that now. I think I should close this. Let me refresh. Okay, so once you're signed in, you'll have this interface. We'll get to understand what this interface is about, but this should be how your Google Colab looks like. And another advantage of using Google Collaboratory is that all your codes are automatically saved to your Google Drive. So Google Colab is part of the suite of products or suite of applications in the Google ecosystem, right? So since we're using an offline mode, that's Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook also saves things automatically, or auto saves it on your computer device. That's on your local disk. So I already have Jupyter Notebook here. Just go to your command line of terminal and just type in Jupyter Notebook and press enter. Yeah, so it will start a server. Yeah, that's just what you're seeing here. Then it's now going to open it's going to open an interface, a default interface, as you'd call it. So I have my file directory here, applications, desktop, most of the things here. Okay, I think this is the root directory. If I go to desktop, I'll see the folders here, right? If I go to another section, I'm going to see another folder. So in my desktop, I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call it Python Crash Course. So I'll just select folder. I can choose to rename the folder. I'll just click on this checkbox and select rename. I'm just trying to create a folder. I can also just do that manually on your desktop device. And if you are using Google Colab, it's the similar process. I think you just select, or you just edit the name of the file directly and later create a folder in your Google Drive and send this guy to that folder. So I'll just call it Python Crash Course. Okay, so I have Python Crash Course here. I also have Python Crash Course somewhere here in my, on my desktop. So I'll just double click on this guy. And since I've created a folder, Python Crash Course, I want to create a file, a Jupyter Notebook file inside my Python Crash Course folder. So if you come to the top right section, you'll see the new button. So just select that. and you select the first option, Python 3, that's ipykernel. Now, a Jupyter Notebook file has an extension or has extensions just like every other normal file. If you're using a PowerPoint file, it's .pptx. If you're using a PDF file, it's .pdf, right? But if you're using a Python file, if you're creating a Python file, it's .py. But Jupyter Notebook file comes with the extension .ipynb. That stands for Interactive Python Notebook. Where is it? IPYNB full meaning. Yeah, Interactive Python Notebook. Okay, so I'll just close this. So I'll just select the first option to create the Jupyter Notebook file. I can choose to close this guy. And so I have my Jupyter Notebook interface, right? It's quite simple. It's very simple to use. You can always feel free to explore the interface. You have the file section, you have the edit section, you have the view section, you have other sections, right? Then you have these options here, or these functions. This plus sign is to create what you call cells. These are where you write your Python code, right? So I can choose to write something here, I can give space, I can choose to delete as the case may be. This is also just to delete cells, right? This to copy, this to duplicate. Then these are like different functions. If you want this to be a cell, if you want to have headings, if you'd have seen some Jupyter Notebook files, they have like headings. So if I want to have a heading, I'll put a hash sign, Python or introduction to Python. So I'd like to change this cell from a code cell to, let's say, markdown cell. Then I'll just run that cell and I'll have this guy recorded. Please, if you have any questions to be answered after this session, and you'd also have access to the recorded session, so you can always follow through, right? So, okay, what I did here was just add two hash signs, and I ran the cell. So there are two ways to run your cell. You can either click this run button or hold your shift key and press enter. Right, so I have introduction to Python heading. So here I can write my Python code and I can run it. I can write my Python code and I can run it. Okay, so we can start with writing Python code. Same principle applies for Google Colab. Just write your Python code here and run it. I think there's a run. Yeah, this is the run. This is the play button. So I'll just close this and stick with Jupyter Notebook for now. We have this file is not saved, so I'll just click on File section, click on Rename. Then I'll start with, let's say, day1. Also, you'd have access to this file, this Python file, so that you can easily access it, right? So we're going to start with two things: input statement, or input and output statement, right? So Python is a very relatable language, and what it means is the Python language itself is quite similar to English language, how we communicate in English language generally. So input and output statement just simply means, as the word implies, inputs when you're collecting something, output when you're displaying or giving something, right? So we have like reserved keywords or reserved statements in Python that perform specific functions. Example, input statement and output statement. So we'll get to understanding Python gradually as we proceed. But the first step, get understanding on input statement are used to collect information from a user. Output statement are used to display information to a user. Input statement are used to collect. Output statement are used to display. So we're going to start in first with output statement. That's the print statement. We must be familiar with we might be familiar with the print statement. So I'll write my print. Okay, if you want to see this line, I don't think it comes by default. I think you can click on the view section, yeah, and show toggle line number. Select this toggle line number. Yeah, you have access to this line. So print statement, open and close parentheses or brackets. Then let's say I'll put hello John. John, right? So we're starting with output statement. I want to display hello John to my screen, to my computer screen. So I'm going to use the output statement, print, right? So I would run this guy. I'll just click on run. I have hello John displayed, right? Easy and good to go. I can also choose to print a number. So print 4 points or 3.142, right? So I just shift and enter and run 3.142, right? So you can also choose to print other things. It can be, okay, this is a decimal, so I can just choose to print a number 3. Now notice how we have this guy in quotes, but these guys are not in quotes. Now, the same way we have alphabets, numbers, decimals in English or general mathematical concepts. That's all. We also have what you call strings, integers, and floats in Python, right? So an example of a alphabet in English alphabets in English are called strings in Python, right? Numbers in English are called integers in Python. Okay, no, this is for numbers. So I'll just paste it here. Then what's this? Decimals in English are called floats in Python. So they are regarded as what we call data types. So we'll be making use of the term strings, floats, integer, strings, floats, integer, integer. They're just trying to tell you string. It's a combination of, well, okay, I would explain the main definition of a string, but get familiar with strings as alphabet, floats as decimals, and integers as numbers. In strings, generally in Python, anything inside the quote is regarded as a string, meaning a number can be in quotes and seen as a string in Python. I'll explain this in the next cell. So if we write print 3 plus 4, if I run this guy, it shows me 7. We can perform mathematical operations in Python. But if I write print, I put my integers in quotes, 3 plus 4. Notice how it gives me 3 plus 4. Python identifies this guy in quote as a string. Python identifies this guy without quotes as an integer. So take note, especially when you want to perform mathematical operation, your integers or floats should not be in quotes. They should just be strings. So you definitely get familiar with the syntax of Python. Syntax just means the language structure, how Python is written, the language itself. You definitely get familiar with Python syntax, alphabet, strings are going to be in quotes. Well, not just strings, but any other thing that is in quotes regarded as a string. Floats are decimals or numbers with points. Then numbers are just like integers are just like numbers, normal numbers, right? So you can let's just write an exercise here. Just display any output to your computer screen. Yeah, so you can just like try this out now. Just display random things using the print statement. Print statement is used to display to the user. Notice something. Notice I'm putting this guy in. I'm adding a hashtag to this first line, and I'm not adding a hashtag. If I run this line, I'm getting an error. That's because Python does not understand this combination of words. So there's what we call comments in Python. So it's just a way to, well, not necessarily hide, but just to ignore text that are being displayed. So let's say I just want to have like mini headings for this cell to understand what we're talking about, okay, input and output statement, then exercise. So if I run this guy, I don't have any error because of this comment. So a hashtag before each word in Python adds a comment. So after we've looked at output statement using the print statement, we're going to look at input statement. Input statement is used to collect, receive informations. And usually when you're using, let me copy this guy. Think out. Okay, I think I made him output. So I'll just come here and write, I think I copied it. So again, input statement used to collect, output statement used to display, right? When you are using an input statement, when you're collecting things from a user or from a person, it's usually in form of a question. So what's your name? How old are you? What's your favorite color? Those questions that you ask information from a user. So I'm going to start with my input, right? Same way I had my print at first. I open my bracket. So I can ask the user, enter your name, right? Question mark. So if I run this guy, I have like an input field here that I can type in a name. So my name, I think I'll just, what's going on? Okay, I'll just put in John Solomon as my name and press enter. So input statement used to collect, output statement used to display. I can choose to have this guy here, run John Solomon. So I have John Solomon here, right? So input statements collect information from user, output statement, display information, and you're done. The next topic we're going to be looking at is variables. So let me create a heading for that. I'll come to this section, select Markdown. Okay, I think I made a mistake. Variables. Okay, so variables in Python are, look at variables as containers. Look at variables as containers. Now, a container holds content. So it can be a water bottle. A water bottle is a typical example of a container. A water bottle contains water, right? And so the bottle is regarded as a container, while the water is regarded as the content, right? So container equals content. I believe the analogy is great. So variables, look at variables, or look at container as the variable. then look at content as the value. Same principle apply. So you'd have a variable. For every variable, there must be a corresponding value. And for every value, there must be an assigned variable, if you'd call it that way. Okay. So let's say I want to hold a value. I want to hold my name. So I'd have a name variable equals to, I'll put my name here, John, capital letter, I think Solomon, right? So name is regarded as my variable. John Solomon is regarded as my value. Remember, you can also put, when you're writing alphabet, it's going to be in quotes, it's regarded as strings. I can choose to also contain another value. Let's say gender. So gender is a variable equals, I think male, right? Then let's go with another variable like age 21. So name, gender, age are regarded as variables or variable names. John Solomon, male, 21 are regarded as variable values, right? So variable name, variable value. Now, previously, when um we could access values directly. So print hello John, it displayed John. Print 3, it displayed 3. Now when you have a value in a variable, you can only access that value by the variable name. You can only access this value by the variable gender. You can only access this value by the variable age, right? So if I, let's say, print name, okay, you'd always get errors once in a while, and Python is kind enough to sort of explain that error, right? So it's a name error, it's highlighted the name. I think line 1 here is not defined, meaning Python cannot recognize this name that you're trying to call here or you're trying to print. And that's because we did not run this cell. We just ran this cell. So I'm going to run this cell. Then I'm now going to run this guy again. So Python understand, okay, this cell has been run. There's a name variable here assigned to a value. So it is now giving me the output John Solomon. Notice how the variable name is not in quotes. Because if you put it in quotes, you can use either single or double quotes. If you put it in quotes, Python is going to look at this as a string, not a variable. So variables and integers are one of the data types and things you don't put in quotes generally in Python. So print name, I can choose to print age, I can choose to print gender, right? So name, age, and gender. So I can choose to form a sentence with this. Let's say, hello, my name is John Solomon, and I am 21 years old. Yeah. I'm thinking of adding this guy male, but let's just like go with that line. So there's something called concatenation. So concatenation. So I would go with my print statement since I want to display information to a user. So I'm just going to write the full statement. Hello, my name is John Solomon. So let me like zoom out. I live in I live in Nigeria and I am a 21-year. I wanted to add male, sorry. Year-old male. Oh, I'll just write like 21-year-old. I'm 21 years old, yeah. So we want to achieve this line. I want to display this information. If you just run this guy, it's going to give you the exact thing here. But what we are trying to achieve with variables is usually when you have a good example is when you submit a form, right? And usually when you submit that form, you get like more like a personalized message or response. Okay, thank you, John, for filling this form. We'll get back to you. So they were able to store that field in a variable or in a container somewhere, and they are now displaying back an output. So that's similar to what we want to achieve here. All right, so concatenation. Concatenation simply means joining, right? So you can join in two ways in Python using the comma operator or the plus operator. Comma operator or the plus operator. So it just simply means you are joining a string with a variable. We don't want to write John Solomon here. We want to access John Solomon by the variable called name. Let me add. Okay, I think. Okay, let me remove age and just put country. Let's go with Nigeria. And I live in, and I am a male. Does that make sense? I think I would remove gender. Okay. Okay, yeah, I think that's fine. So plus operator or comma operator. All right. So we don't want to access or we don't want to display John Solomon. We want to access the value directly from the variable called name. We want to access this value Nigeria directly from the variable called country. We want to access this value 21 directly from the variable age. All right. So how do we do that? I'll just cancel this, cancel this. So we're going to come back to this line, but let's have another concatenation example here. So concatenation to, I don't know, okay, point two. So if I have, let's say name, let's have another name Paul. So print this, this is going to be an example of concatenation. So instead of writing Paul, I'm going to write name. Remember, we don't put variables inside quotes, so it's going to be outside. And lastly, we're going to use either of these operators, either comma or plus. So I'm going to add a comma in between my string and my variable. I'm going to add a comma, that's my concatenation operation, in between my string hello and my variable name. So if I run this guy, I have hello Paul, right? I can choose to add a comma. If I run this guy, I have hello Paul, right? I can choose to use the plus sign too. I think it's just best if you use, okay, plus sign, the plus operator does not give a space by default. So I think you need to add a space here. Yeah, so but the comma operator just gives a default space. So comma operator is fine because even if you're using the plus operator, try to use it without numbers because it can mistake that for addition. All right, so you can just stick with the comma operator. So hello name, that's hello Paul. Right. So I can choose to add an exclamation after this guy. So I think I'll just add this. Right. So since I'm having an extra space here, let me use a plus operator here. Okay. So I can concatenate before and after my variable. I can concatenate before and after my variable. Okay. So let's come back to this long concatenation process. Hello, my name is John Solomon. I live in Nigeria and I am 21 years old. So remember, we're going to remove um okay, so we're going to put our strings in quotes. So hello, my name is, I live in, I think this guy should also be in quotes. All right. So wherever we're supposed to have an incomplete, wherever we have an incomplete statement, we'll just slot in a variable name, age, and country. So hello, my name is John Solomon should be here. Same way Paul was here, all right? So I'm just going to write name. I think I should add a comma in between my string and my variable. Okay. So I should put a country variable here. And okay, I think I should put a comma. And I am 9 years old. Where is it? Okay, so comma age, comma, right. So hello, my name is a string. Name is a variable. We're accessing John Solomon from the variable called name. We're accessing Nigeria from the variable called country. We're accessing 21 from the variable called age. So if I run this guy, all right, so we have the complete statement. Hello, my name is John Solomon. I live in Nigeria and I'm 21 years old. So that's a brief summary on concatenation, or that's a quick example on concatenation. That's joining variables and also input and output statements. All right. So I'd like us to handle a quick exercise on variables and concatenation. So you can choose to come up with variable names of your choice, then concatenate them to form a sentence. Notice how I have descriptive variable names. If you look at variable called age, it contains an age value. If you look at variable called country, it contains a country value. Right, so it's always good practice to use descriptive variable names, name, age, gender, country, based on the value it contains. So it's not advisable to, let's say, you're storing the name of a food in, let's say, a shoe variable. That does not make sense. So always use descriptive variable names. We have different variable name, um, we have different variable naming styles. I think if you're having like, let's say first name and last name, you can choose to write it like first name, first underscore name, right? So John, last underscore name, Solomon, right? That still works. So you can choose to have first name together. You can choose to have what you call a camel case. The second word begins with a capital letter. Or you can choose to have it this way. A variable name cannot start with a number. So you cannot have a variable called 1 or 2. That does not work. You cannot have a variable that has a dot or a hyphen in between. So it cannot be first minus name or hyphen name. Python is going to get this confused for subtraction operation. So I think let me cancel or X. I don't know. Okay, yeah. So these are like bad variable name practices. And I think there should be no space also as well. No space in your variable name. All right. Then lastly, I think these are the three, if I'm not mistaken. So a good convention is you can replace what went wrong. Okay, so it can be a name. It can have a number, but you shouldn't start with a number. It can also start with an underscore actually. So underscore first underscore name. All right. So I think these are valid. These are also valid. Okay. All right. So we have been able to look at two topics in Python on this first introduction to Python course or class. Input and output statements. There's so much you can do with input and output statements. You can also perform other mathematical operations like 3 divided by 4, 0.75. You can also choose to have the other mathematical operation, I think modulus operation. So 4 modulus 2, that should give 2. I think this one has to do with remainder. I can't remember. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, we have quite a handful of other operations in Python. Then I think we should have one more example. I don't think we use variable names with input statements. We only use variable names with display or output statements, right? So I'm going to just write variables with input statements. So let's say I have my name. Now I'm not going to be writing my name. I want the user to give me his or her name. So remember, input statement would start, we're going to start with the input statement and this guy, just enter your name. All right, so enter your name. So I think I'll have a couple gender. I think I'll go with age because, or well, let's say country equal to input, enter the country you live in, right? So let's run this guy. John Solomon, I think Nigeria. Okay, so we want to make this like interactive a bit. So hello John, glad to hear you stay in Nigeria, something like that, just an interactive thing. So I'm going to have a print statement here. So it's going to be hello. I'm not going to know the person's name, so I'll just put name. All right. Then good to know you live in the country you say you live in. I believe that makes sense. All right. So we're just combining the different things we've learned today: input statements, variables, and concatenation. We've already looked at display statement or output statement in the cells prior. So I'll just run this guy, John Solomon. Yeah, so Solomon, then Nigeria or Lagos, Nigeria. So hello, John Solomon. Good to know you live in Lagos, Nigeria. So you can definitely come up with different examples based on these topics, based on variables, based on input statement, and see how to combine and be creative in your Python language code. We're going to be stopping here in today's session, covered Python basics, input and output statement, and also variables. In the next session, we're going to be diving into other topics, data types particularly. We talked a bit about data types. Next session, we're going to be looking at other data types such as lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. You get to see how you have, let's say, a list of friends, a list of foods, a list of names, a list of countries. We're only able to look at just a single country here. Um, Nigeria, just a single age, 21, just a single name, John Solomon. So we'd get to see a list of those details, or get to also see a couple of those details, a set of all those details, a dictionary of those details. Yeah, so that's going to be all for today's session. Please feel free to ask questions now. This code is going to be available along with the recorded session for review and for practice. So yeah, thank you. Please, does anyone have any question or clarification based on today's session? Okay, I think I'll just check the chat. Okay, thank you, Mr. Solomon. Presently on transit. Okay, that's fine. Okay, for Jupyter, I think to access Jupyter, you just open your command prompts. If you are using, am I still sharing my screen? Okay, yeah. So if you are using a Windows operating system, I think you'd search for command prompts. But if you're using a Mac or an Ubuntu OS, just search for terminal. And I already have terminal here. Okay, so let me open on that terminal. Just click here. I think new command. Okay, no, new command. It's supposed to be new something. New window. Yeah, so just search for or just type Jupyter Notebook. Now, I said earlier that this Jupyter Notebook opens around a local server. If you close this guy, we wouldn't have access. Let me close this guy. If I terminate, we don't have access to this Jupyter Notebook again. So ensure you don't close the Jupyter Notebook server that is running, so that you always have access to. Okay, I think I made a syntax error. So yeah, so we're back to this interface it gives. So I saved the file in the folder on the desktop. So all I need to do is just to navigate desktop, Python crash course, d1.ipynb, right? And ipynb stands for Interactive Python Notebook. They have all these cells that we've been able to write good Python code. So I believe that will be an answer to your question. You don't have to always, you don't need to answer, you don't need to install Python anytime you want to use it. It's a one-time installation process. And Jupyter Notebook also works, what do you call it? Offline. Yeah, it's a completely offline software. Then if you can't access Jupyter Notebook, there's an alternative that Google Colaboratory. Yeah, so it's connected to your Google Drive account. You just write your Python code there. So I can have new notebook. And yeah, it's the same interface like this guy. Jupyter Notebook. And Jupyter Notebook is it's a most used language or most used software environment for data scientists. So yeah, definitely on the right path using Jupyter Notebook to write your Python code. There are other interactive development environments. We have Visual Studio Code. Yeah, we also have like Sublime Text. You can write your Python code or Python code here. We have Thonny. Thonny is very lightweight. One small white, yeah, this guy. So I can just search. I have Thonny installed on this computer. So it's relatively small. So I can write my print statement here. Print, I'd go with John Solomon. So I have this green button here. I'll just click on one and I'll see John Solomon displayed here. So yeah, so you can write your Python code here. I don't want to save, so I can choose to close amongst other. Then we have other heavyweight applications like Anaconda, PyCharm, and yeah, I think other softwares, other interactive development environment you can use. Yeah, so I believe all questions in the chat has been answered. So if there are no further questions, would be stopping today's session now, and course resources for today's session is going to be available to you. So we're going to be continuing another session tomorrow, 9 p.m. West African time. Thank you and have a great night.